Peace, y'all. It's your man, Dave. You may have heard me alongside my brother Quest on the Marriage Ain't for Suckers program. We're still going strong, and now it's time to take it up a notch. This is the Grown and Married program with my co-host, my rib, the queen of my castle, the queen of my life, Simone Harris. We've been friends for almost 30 years and married for almost 20. So we know a thing or two about making marriage and relationships work if you're willing to make it work. So gather around, y'all. Share this with your spouses, your friends, your frenemies, and yes, even your enemies. And let's make marriages phenomenal together. Queen Simone, I know you're ready. I know you're set. So let's go.
What up, y'all? My name is L. David Harris. I am your host, and this is the Married... No, it isn't. It's the Grown and Married program. I don't know what I was about to say, but anyway, I'm delighted to be able to share with you. And I am not alone because then it wouldn't be a marriage program. I'm here with my one good wife. That's Queen Simone. This is take 2. Glad you're running with me again.
Yep. Glad I am too. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. So, yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. It's always interesting when you get two people that have been married together to talk about marriage, because it's one thing to talk about it in a vacuum, but it's another thing when, you know, you have a relationship with the person that you're doing the program with, right? So, yeah, big stuff. But you know what? We've been going for several weeks now, and I'm soon going to stop counting because it gets boring when you start getting into the double digits, because people have been running with you for a good while. And so we're happy and thankful that you've chosen to support the program. So what I'm going to ask you to do, like I always do, is to share the program, choose your social media platforms, but please do not spam anyone. I think WhatsApp is one of the culprits, you know, for spamming. Don't just send it to everybody as a personal message. You know, put it into an opt-in feed or put it on your public profile or whatever, where people have already decided that they're interested in what you have to offer. But please don't spam anybody because that doesn't help you. It doesn't help us. And it definitely won't help them, because then they just kind of get irritated and don't want to look at your messages anymore. That was free. Also, please go and direct your web browser to grownandmarried.com, where you can have access to the various podcasting aggregators, because you may be listening on the radio. Even if you are, I'm asking you to log on to one of the podcasting aggregators so you can leave an honest review and an honest rating, which will help this program to grow by leaps and bounds. It's a simple thing, but it has a large impact. And also, you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions at grownandmarried.com, and we'll do our best to answer the questions on the program at the appropriate time. All right? So thank you. And let me say it again. Thank you. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Simone, what are we talking about today?
When the spell wears off.
Mm-hmm.
When the spell wears off. Yeah, this is going to be a touchy subject, but we have to, or a topic, but we have to talk about it because it's affecting so many of our marriages. A lot of our friends that we, we talk to, they have friends who, who are having issues, or even people that, just strangers, we see they're having problems. And it's, basically it's just talking about spouses who have stepped outside of their marriage. They've found someone else.
Oh, boy.
So they think, who might be better than their current spouse, who might be so-called putting out better than their current spouse.
What is that? What's putting out? Sorry.
Well, whether it's emotionally, sexually, intellectually, all of that. So they've lost interest in their spouse. The one that they said I do to. Like,
oh, the one they actually married. Got
the
it.
one they actually married. Yes. Whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 18 years, 20 years.
Right.
And so now, they've stepped outside the marriage. They now form a new relationship with this person. Some have even gone to the point of saying they actually got out of their marriage, and now they're in with this person that they thought would fulfill everything that they didn't have in their previous marriage. But then they marry the person now, and it's like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. When actually you did.
So it's almost like sometimes we think the grass is greener on the other side.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I have one thing to say to that. Really not one, but, if I want to just send a zinger and, no disrespect, but just water your grass. Water your grass. And I know that that's easy for me to say, but reality is the grass is never greener on the other side when it comes on to two people who have made the vow to live with one another, to love one another. If you're into having children, in your own marriage paradigm, to have children and grow together, have an impact on community together. And then, look at somebody else's front lawn and say, you know what, I'd rather be over there because listen, it's not real. Like it's a mirage. It's not real. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. And they are like, well, my spouse, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. Look how they look at the other person or the new person that they're with, and they're like, yeah, they have all the bells and whistles, like they take care of themselves. And that might be true. But did you actually sit down and talk with your spouse and say, listen, I realize that, you're not carrying yourself, or you don't take care of yourself the way like you used to. Is there something wrong? Is there something that I can help you with? Like what's going on? Have you sat down and did you talk to them and see what the issue may be? And it could be a simple thing as, well, I figured you weren't attracted to me anymore because you stopped telling me that I looked good, or you stopped encouraging me, or you stopped affirming me. And so I figured, what's the point if you're not going to, say these things or make me feel a certain way? Even though some would say, you shouldn't have to rely on someone to tell you that. But that's not true to a certain point, because everyone loves, it's like with children, they want you to affirm them when they do something. They want you to tell them you can do it, or you did well, or whatever, Yeah,
failure doesn't breed success on any level.
Right.
So if, at home, you or I feel like we're failing at any part of our marriage, because it's not always a sexual issue that drives people into the arms of other people.
Right.
But, it's people who feel like they're a failure at keeping the interest of their spouse, God forbid, satisfying, because sometimes we take that satisfying thing a little bit too far and feel like we're performing, but that's another program. But, satisfying in quotes our spouses or whatever. And then we just like, we happen into a situation, we can come into a hypothetical situation where, you happen to be dropping off or let's see, we drop off together. You happen to be picking up Josiah at school, on a regular basis without me. And, if I'm not doing what I should do in our marriage with you, person X sees you day in and day out and notices maybe your cloud is browdy. No, your brow is cloudy. Like you may look a little bit downcast. You don't know why.
Right.
You're not thinking about it, but maybe this dude recognizes that, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And then it moves from there, and it's like, "Wow, he noticed that."
Right.
Well, yeah, I'm okay. 2 days later, boy, you've been looking not so okay lately. You want to talk about it?
Right.
Well, no, not really. Next day, how's your husband doing? What was that? What was that about? Is he all right? Yeah, he's okay, but we're not doing so well. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. You want to talk about it? I probably shouldn't, but well,
Right.
and then you start sort of forming this organic relationship. But what's happening is your heart, just
Mhm.
for who knows what reason, I'm not going to probably give a hypothetical on that, but your heart starts to kind of draw out after third party guy.
Mhm.
And you start forming a relationship and a bond that only should be happening with the husband. And then one thing turns to another, leads to another. And next thing you know, what went from, you know, a loneliness feeling or a brokenness feeling at home turns into an emotional, then maybe sexual affair. And it's like, well, how did I get here?
Right.
And so before I go too far, I need to recommend a book by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. I used to listen to these people regularly many years ago when I was in the mental health field. And this one is titled Boundaries in Marriage because it helps you to improve your relationship with your spouse. And, when things don't go so right, like in the context of what we're talking about,
Mhm.
how to recover from that. So that's Boundaries in Marriage by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. It's a very good book. And comes, with a series of other books related to other stuff that could be helpful too.
Mhm.
But yeah, things don't go, they go real funny, and it doesn't take long when we're vulnerable and we've not drawn a strong enough barrier around our marriage that says, even though things aren't going as well as I want them to at the moment, and I deserve, I'm not going to allow a third party to kind of break in and become a part of this situation here.
Right. 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 It's, I don't know. It's really a hard place to be in after you've made the decision to leave your spouse, and now you're in that relationship, and it's like, okay, what in the world? This is not the person I thought they were going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now you're there, and they're not the person that you thought it was going to be.
So it was like TV at first or movie where it's this whirlwind of pick all the positive things that you hoped and expected. And it's just so wonderful for days, week, months, maybe. And then after everything in your life has changed, you've exchanged your spouse for somebody else and sort of maybe in your own mind recovered from the separation. And you're still, on cloud nine with third party. And then something happens.
Something happens where you're just like, actually, I want to say it this way. You finally woke up.
Oh, so it was a dream before.
Basically.
Fantastical.
Yes.
Yeah.
You finally woke up and you're just like, what did I do? Because, and I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in there. You have a child or children.
Wait, with who? The third party or?
No, the...
Your spouse.
Your spouse.
Right.
Right? And now children are involved. And it's like, so now you probably lost your children as far as, that family. You lost your family. And now you're with the third party.
Yeah.
And you finally wake up and go, oh my goodness, I lost my children and my wife. And now that you're on the outside now looking in, you start to see those things that you actually saw in your wife when you got married to her. And now you're looking at the relationship that you're in now, and you're just like, what just happened? Yeah. And that person is no longer, the third party is no longer that, that honeymoon phase that you were in. The third party is not looking attractive anymore. Like, what do you do now?
Yeah.
And it's like, now who has the problem? Was it your wife or was it you? Because it's not the third party now, because now you're seeing you actually didn't resolve what the issue was with the wife.
Right.
you just checked out and was like, I'm done. And now you moved on. Have you resolved in your head, why is it that you were not satisfied with your wife? And now you're seeing something with a third party. You're just like, oh my goodness, I'm still not satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah, that thing is very complicated, and of course, we can't resolve it in a quick program. But let's just say you get to, we fast track this to where it's even possible to, swallow your pride if you're the one who stepped out, and try to get back into relationship with your spouse, because true enough, you did make a promise and your spouse made a promise too. And likely, your spouse still loves you, but is extremely broken up, extremely hurt, extremely distrustful, and rightly so. So, the question is, should the betrayed spouse ignore his or her feelings of betrayal? And of course, the obvious answer is no. Mm-hmm. And should you even expect it? Because what happens is, sometimes the betrayer will say, it was a mistake, and, make it kind of light, like, maybe give it a day. Like, all right, so here's a time that you can say all that you want to say about what went wrong, and then we need to just move on. Right? You can say how disgusting I am if you're into that. You can tell me how bad it felt and all of that. But as soon as I say, I'm sorry, all right, I'm sorry, you're supposed to just kind of let it go and we can move on. And life is like happily ever after. But really and truly, there are so many stages that have to, that you two need to go through. But certainly the one who was betrayed needs to be able to go through, because a lot has changed in his or her perspective about what the relationship was or wasn't, and there's still a lot of confusion. So somebody has some explaining to do, and that would be the offending spouse, right?
Right. They have a lot of, I guess the obvious is going to be the trust issue.
Yeah.
Because it's a different thing if okay, I'm trying to say this. Okay, let me just say it and then we can talk. As far as the trust is concerned, I think that it's a different thing, or a trust issue, if the offending spouse had just wanted out, but did not have a third party.
Okay, right. It's a different thing.
Having a third party. So now, is there a trust? Is there a different kind of trust with this situation that we're talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And in this case, well, not just in this case, but especially in this case, trust is earned. And so, the person who is the offending spouse has to be honest and say, and responsible, and realize that, now you have to be cognizant of all of your actions 100% of the time, like how you use your cell phone, how you use social media, how your time is spent. You understand? Like, who do you spend time with? What happens after work if you're a person who's employed, or what happens after school, or whatever your outside of house activity is? Like, these are kinds of things where some of the offending spouses get impatient because now they feel like they're on trial. And it's like, well, I don't know if you want to say, if you're on trial, yes or no, but really and truly at this point, you kind of have to weather the storm, because you have to be willing, if you want your marriage to work, you have to be willing to be that level of transparent, because the first go around where life was just normal and nobody was suspicious and certainly not paranoid, that has flown away. So it's going to take a little bit of time to restore trust. Right. And, that doesn't give the offended spouse who has claimed to love you the right to drag you through the mud. That's not the intent. Right. But at the same time, you're going to have to demonstrate honest and candid. I don't know what your intentions are, what you're trying to accomplish. If you need to make new promises.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole lot to it, and of course, that's why good Christian therapists are there.
Right.
But there are lessons that need to be learned from the affair as well, like what precipitated this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one of the things I would say too is, step back and reevaluate why you were not satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Why you decide to step out in the first place.
Yeah.
And then, talk to the spouse. Because if it's a situation where, okay, that, you're not talking to the spouse anymore because they don't take care of themselves. They don't bathe. They don't wash their hair. They don't comb their hair. They don't dress a certain, you know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
like, because you didn't marry them like that. And, what attracted you to them is no longer there in your view. So what is it that, at what point did you see that stop? And maybe, just try and figure out what happened or what was happening at the time when this change took place.
Yeah.
And then talk to your spouse. And that's the big thing. The communication is key. Sitting down and talking together. And like you said, get the good Christian counselor or therapist to have you all to evaluate and look at how the relationship is going and what took place, and to help you all to figure things out and put it back together again.
Yeah. And one thing, you talk about communication, when you're actually talking about, what happened in the situation, sometimes you need like visual aid, if you want to say, or something external to help during the conversation. Like you and I, we have two microphones and we're speaking, but we don't have we're not having contention. There's nothing loaded about what's happening here. So we just kind of wait our turn, right? Where there's a natural break, we share our thoughts, we share our feelings, right? But when you have a situation that is so charged as infidelity, sometimes you need a little bit extra. So some people suggest something like an object to say, all right, once, I have the object, then it's my time to speak. And then, if I still have the object, it's still my time to speak. And at the appropriate time, then now I share or pass the baton, if you want to say.
Sort of like listening and hearing.
Listening.
Activity.
And yes. And it sounds strange, but believe it or not, that can become a useful tool because it helps people have enough time to express themselves. And if you're disciplined enough not to interrupt, because now you have this visual aid, it's like I have the stick, then it just kind of helps people to listen and then have the opportunity to speak as well. And, once each of you feel like you've been heard, then you can just keep continuing through the process until you can, reasonably say, all right, for now, the time that we're sharing together, we have heard enough, and then agree for another time together to talk these things out, because there's a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So I just, I think of, all these marriages that are just going down the drain because of the number one thing is no communication or lack of communication.
Yeah.
And being truthful and honest and open with each other.
Yes.
And I think in some of these situations, they're not honest and open with themselves, much less with each other.
Right. Yeah.
And so we also bottle up those, those things within us and don't talk to our spouse.
Yeah.
And try to figure out ways. We don't even date each other anymore. What's that about?
Well, life gets busy, and we accept that as a reason or an excuse to lose touch with one another. And oftentimes, it's because we have children. And what happens, and it's very interesting. It's a strange phenomenon, but it's becoming more and more popular is not the best word, but more incidents of this is happening where, so you have children, maybe two, and, all of your focus, who knows at what year of your marriage you had these children, but then all of your focus goes into them, growing them to a certain stage. They go to school, they got, football practice, they have music lessons, ballet, who knows what.
Right.
You get through that stage, and next thing it's time for high school, and then you get through that stage, right? And then it comes a point where there's this empty nest, but now you've blown through 17, 18, 19, 22 years.
Yes.
And you have this spouse that you don't know anymore. And when the children leave the house, you are stuck. And I mean to say it that way. You're stuck in the house with this stranger because your focal point, your focal energy is gone, i.e. your children. And it's like, so all of these years we haven't been connecting.
Right.
And now we're all alone. And it's like, who are you?
Right. They got to know the person all over again.
Yeah. And that becomes almost like a deafening silence in a lot of people's cases when the nest is empty, because, they haven't continued their relationship independent of the children. So,
David, are you saying that we have to be deliberate with spending time with each other during that time?
Yeah, we have to be deliberate in investing time together. And, independently keeping before our minds what brought us together in the first place, so that we don't become uninterested. Sometimes people have a habit of watching, having certain entertainment habits. And at the same time you're busy, at the same time you're tired, at the same time, everything I just described about children, we're also watching these fantastical programs. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, all of that time we're watching these programs. Yeah, they come with the good and bad, but the good is turned up and it's not real. And when our marriages don't look like the thing that caused us to pay how much money to buy these movies, then we have a problem at home, because it's like, well, why are you not like that? Well, that's not real. Right. Like, she doesn't actually exist. That lady right there does not exist. And that dude right there does not exist. That's not real. But we can't sometimes sense the difference between reality and virtual reality, if you want to say. Right. And all of those things vying for our attention one time, then we wake up one day and be like, who in the world did I marry? And it's like, but dude, it was 20 years ago. What do you mean? Yeah. So we have to be deliberate in all things related to our marriages. And don't think that we can do it alone, because we need each other. We need commitment from each other. And, when the spell wears off in the cases of infidelity, where you realize how badly things did go, and if you're the offending spouse, you're actually apologetic and sorry and broken up because of the impact that you've had on your family and your spouse in particular. Boy, it's a long road, but you do not have to do it alone. Right. And I can't overemphasize that. Don't try to do it alone. Get help. Yeah.
Yeah. Step back, reevaluate, speak to your spouse, and get good help.
Yeah.
Fight for your marriage.
Yes. And so I would say that to both spouses. I don't know how I would feel, because I'm not in that situation. So it really doesn't matter how it would feel. Right. But if you two have decided that you're going to work it through, then by all means, do your best. Do not work it through by yourselves, because if you get good qualified help, and if you're praying people, and I hope you are, then you can ask the Lord to help you mend those broken fences. And, you may have a testimony to help with other people who've been in the same situation. Holla at ya.
There you have it, y'all. I hope you've enjoyed your time with us. Marriage is about mutual love and mutual respect, and it works for those willing to make it work. Real talk, Our spouses are treasured jewels given to us to make life better. And the sooner we learn to value one another will be the sooner we become the most phenomenal versions of ourselves we can be. Until next time, peace from Dave and the queen of my castle, Simone. We got love for you, baby.